Good Wednesday morning, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for, you guessed it, March the 1st. 2 months down, and what is that? 10 left to go in the year of 2023. And in our daily Bible reading from Genesis through Esther for this year, thanks so much for tuning in on this first day of March. I hope that you've been with us all the way up until this point. If you haven't been, then no worries. You can go and check out our recordings that we've had for every one of the reads this year so far. You can find those where you're watching now, whether that's on Facebook or YouTube, or you can go to our Facebook page, or our website, loudoncoc.org, loudoncoc.org. You can go there and you can find all of the recordings on that tab where you go to audio files, then go to daily Bible reading. You'll have all that listed there, all the audio recordings and links to all of the previous videos. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Let me get the text of Exodus chapter 19 and Exodus chapter 20 up on the screen so we can read that together today. Israel is approaching Sinai, and there is some work that needs to be done for them to be able to do so. There's a lot of instruction that's given in chapter 19. And then in chapter 20, we have the famous 10 Commandments. They are given in chapter 20. We'll read those together, make a few comments, and our time will be done for today. Again, thanks so much for taking time to read along with me today. I pray that God will bless us as we spend time in his word together. Exodus chapter 19 and verse number 1. In the third month from the very day the Israelites left the land of Egypt, they came to the Sinai wilderness. They traveled from Rephidim, came to the Sinai wilderness, and camped in the wilderness. Israel camped there in front of the mountain referring to the Mount Horeb or Mount Sinai. Moses went up the mountain to God, and Yahweh called to him from the mountain. This is what you must say to the house of Jacob, and explain to the Israelites, you have seen what I did to the Egyptians, and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now, if you will carefully listen to me and keep my covenant, you will be my own possession out of all the peoples, although the whole earth is mine, and you will be my kingdom of priests and my holy nation. These are the words that you are to say to the Israelites. After Moses came back, he summoned the elders of the people and set before them all these words that Yahweh had commanded him. Then all the people responded together, we will do all that Yahweh has spoken. So Moses brought the people's words back to Yahweh. Yahweh said to Moses, I am going to come to you in a dense cloud so that the people will hear when I speak with you and will always believe you. Moses reported the people's words to the Lord, and the Lord told Moses, go to the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow. They must wash their clothes and be prepared by the third day for on the third day, Yahweh will come down on Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people. Put boundaries for the people all around the mountain and say, be careful that you don't go up on the mountain or touch its base. Anyone who touches the mountain must be put to death. No hand may touch him. Instead, he will be stoned or shot with arrows and not live, whether animal or human. When the ram's horn sounds a long blast, they may go up the mountain. Then Moses came down from the mountain to the people and consecrated them, and they washed their clothes. He said to the people, be prepared by the third day. Do not have sexual relations with women. On the third day, when morning came, there was thunder and lightning, a thick cloud on the mountain, and a very loud blast from a ram's horn, so that all the people in the camp shuddered. Then Moses brought the people out of the camp to meet God, and they stood at the foot of the mountain. Mount Sinai was completely enveloped in smoke, because Yahweh came down on it in fire. Its smoke went up like the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mountain shook violently. As the sound of the ram's horn grew louder and louder, Moses spoke, and God answered him in the thunder. Yahweh came down on Mount Sinai at the top of the mountain. Then Yahweh summoned Moses to the top of the mountain, and he went up. Yahweh directed Moses, go down and warn the people not to break through to see Yahweh, otherwise many of them will die. Even the priests who come near Yahweh must consecrate themselves, or Yahweh will break out in anger against them. Moses responded to Yahweh, the people cannot come up Mount Sinai, since you warned us. Put a boundary around the mountain and consecrate it. And Yahweh replied to him, go down and come back with Aaron, but the priests and the people must not break through to come up to Yahweh, or he will break out in anger against them. So Moses went down to the people and told them. Then God spoke all these words. I am Yahweh, your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the place of slavery. Do not have other gods besides me. Do not make an idol for yourselves, whether in the shape of anything in the heavens above, or on the earth below, or in the waters under the earth. Do not bow in worship to them, and do not serve them, for I, Yahweh, your God, am a jealous God, bringing the consequences of the father's iniquity on the children to the third and fourth generations of those who hate me, but showing faithful love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commands. Do not misuse the name of Yahweh your God, because Yahweh will not leave anyone unpunished who misuses his name. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. You are to labor 6 days and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to Yahweh your God. You must not work, you, your son or daughter, your male or female servant, your livestock, or the resident alien who is within your city gates. For Yahweh made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and everything in them in 6 days. Then he rested on the seventh day. Therefore, Yahweh blessed the Sabbath day and declared it holy. Honor your father and your mother, so that you may have a long life in the land that Yahweh your God is giving you. Do not murder, do not commit adultery, do not steal, do not give false testimony against your neighbor, do not covet your neighbor's house, do not covet your neighbor's wife, his male or female servant, his ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. All the people witnessed the thunder and lightning, the sound of the ram's horn, and the mountain surrounded by smoke. When the people saw it, they trembled and stood at a distance. You speak to us, and we will listen, they said to Moses, but don't let God speak to us. We will die. Moses responded to the people, don't be afraid, for God has come to test you, so that you will fear him and will not sin. And the people remained standing at a distance as Moses approached the total darkness where God was. Then Yahweh told Moses, this is what you are to say to the Israelites. You have seen that I have spoken to you from heaven. Do not make gods or silver to rival me. Do not make gods of gold for yourselves. Make an earthen altar for me, and sacrifice on it your burnt offerings and fellowship offerings, your flocks and herds. I will come to you and bless you in every place where I cause my name to be remembered. If you make a stone altar for me, do not build it out of cut stones. If you use a chisel on it, you will defile it. Do not go up to my altar on steps, so that your nakedness is not exposed. And that is Exodus chapter 19 and Exodus chapter 20. And really, once again, you've heard me harp on it multiple times, just kind of an unfortunate chapter break here. I really wish they would have cut it off at verse 22, because these ordinances seem to go together better with what we're going to see here later on. But nonetheless, as we come to chapter 19, now we see the fulfillment, and that's something I think we need to remember. If you're doing any writing in your Bibles, just taking notes and writing down some references if they're not already there, I will encourage you to write down here chapter 3 and verse number 12, where Moses was asking for proof that Yahweh was going to send him to the Egyptians, and he gives that kind of strange answer that, well, you'll know it whenever you all gather here to worship me at this mountain. Well, now we have them here, back where Moses was at the mountain, and they are fulfilling this promise that Yahweh made, and everything's really come full circle, because he has met God at Horeb, Moses says originally, and now he is returning to meet God with the people at Horeb once again. What we have here from Israel, I really like this quote from one writer. He says, Israel is now transformed into a worshiping people of God. We really haven't seen that up to this point, have we? Not a tremendous amount of worship. We had the song by the sea where they sang together and worship through song. But now we're going to see much more being done by the people here whenever it comes to offering sacrifices and such. There's 3 times that I can tell it seems that Moses goes up on top of the mountain to directly communicate with Yahweh. We see it here in verse 3 going through verse 7. I believe we see it again in verse number 9 going through verse 14. It seems, let me double check that. Or verse number 8, I should say. Verse number 8, they go back up to he goes back up to Yahweh. So 8 through 14 would be the second time. And then the third time seems to be verses 20 through 25. So 3 instances in which Moses goes up on the mountain, he receives a message, comes back down to the people, then goes back up to the mountain again, receives a message, brings back down to the people, so on and so forth. Again, it seems to be, as best I can tell, 3 times that this happens. The first time that Moses goes up on the mountain and interacts with Yahweh, again, verses 3 through 7. This is one of my favorite texts in all the Old Testament, because it really shows the purpose for which God has chosen this people. And he's chosen this people, and what he has done in the eyes of this people, what they've seen is for the purpose of them remembering who Yahweh is, and then remembering also who they are, that God has, that he has brought them out. He's carried them out on eagle's wings. And because of that, it is his desire that they will carefully listen to him and keep the covenant. And in doing so, they would be his own possession. They would be a kingdom of priests. They would be a holy nation to the Lord. This is the purpose. The purpose is for them to be his special possession, to be his royal property. And then for them to be a kingdom of priests, to be the mediators between God and the nations, drawing them back to himself. And then they would do so through being a holy people, behaving in the correct manner, honoring God through that righteous behavior. This was their purpose. Remember what I've done, and then obey my commands, and you will reap these particular blessings. So he goes up, receives that message, then he comes back and delivers it to the people. And I want to note verse number 8, because they say all together, they respond all together, we will do all that Yahweh has spoken. Fortunately here, their bark is a bit stronger than their bite, meaning they talk a big game, but unfortunately we're going to see throughout the history of Israel, they don't exactly back that up. Well, it's back up to the people. Then at the end of verse number 8, Moses brought the people's word back to Yahweh. He goes up there and tells them, hey, in case you didn't hear that, this is what they say. And at this point, Yahweh, once again speaking to Moses, says, I'm going to come to you in a dense cloud so that the people will hear you. He wants for the people to observe Yahweh talking to Moses so that they know that God's presence is truly with Moses, and so that they will have confidence in Moses and trust in Moses to be the mediator between themselves and Yahweh. And in this particular conversation, the issues surround the need for the people to be consecrated, because where they are approaching on this mountain, it is holy ground, it is holy space. This echoes very strongly what we see in Exodus chapter 3. Whenever Moses approaches the burning bush, he's told to take off his sandals because he's standing on holy ground. He is in sacred space. You cannot be in this sacred space where God is without being a holy, consecrated people. And so that is what Moses is going to. He is going to eventually consecrate the people for 3 days and wash their clothes, and also give this somewhat maybe strange command that they abstain from sexual relations. But I think that ties into the need for being ceremonially clean at this point. So it does end up happening on the 3rd day. There is thunder and lightning. There's a thick cloud. There's the sound of a very loud trumpet, and they all approach and they stand at the foot of the mountain. And it says in verse 18, again, just drawing even more so on the burning bush scene, that the mountain of Sinai was completely enveloped in smoke because Yahweh came down on it in fire. I picture in my brain almost what it would be like to be at the foot of a mountain when a volcano is erupting. Here is Yahweh's presence coming down. There's shaking. There's violent shaking, the sound of the trumpet, and Moses spoke to God and answered him in the thunder. There's a conversation that takes place here. We're not given the details of that, unfortunately, but that just is what it is. And at that point, Yahweh summons Moses to come back up to the mountain. So he comes back up, And then he's told to go back down again and warn the people, verse 21. So I guess maybe there's four instances here in which Moses is coming down and going back up. But anyways, verse number 21, go down and warn the people. Warn them to make sure that they listen, that they don't they don't try to break through to see Yahweh. And if they do, people are going to die. And we don't want that. There's a mention of priest here, which is kind of weird because it almost seems anachronistic. Who are the priests? There's really not a good answer to that. Some say that this would show some poor chronology within Exodus. Maybe this got messed up in some way. We're not quite sure concerning that here. Maybe there were some pseudo priests who fulfilled certain responsibilities. Maybe this is in reference to those who helped Moses in the previous chapter. Again, we're just not exactly sure who is being referenced here, but he's told to go down to get them and to get Aaron, and they can come up to the mountain as well. And what we're going to see almost is we're seeing the initial pattern of what it means to be in the presence of God. Moses is allowed to go to the very top of the mountain into what might be recognized as a holy of holy places, such as is in the tabernacle and the temple. Aaron and the priest are able to go about halfway up the mountain or so, which would be maybe corresponding to the holy places. And then the lay people, the normal people, the rest of the nation can only stay in the outer court, which is at the foot of the mountain. So this right here sets the pattern for what it means to approach God, again, in holy, sacred space, such as is going to be seen in the tabernacle and in the temple. Well, then we get to chapter 20, and the 10 commandments are given out. Number 1, you are not to have any other gods besides me. Very simply put, I am your God. To you, there are no others. I alone am worthy of such a position in your eyes. Number 2, do not make an idol, because, again, me explaining this, I can't be truly captured in material form. I'm so above material form that you just cannot capture who I am as Yahweh. And then added to that is, definitely don't do that and then bow down to them and serve them, because again, that's not me. You cannot capture the essence of who I am in some sort of material image. Number 3, do not misuse the name of the Lord your God, the name of Yahweh your God, or traditional translations might say, do not take the Lord's name in vain. And yeah, there would be some senses in which you might speak the name of Yahweh and do so in a vain way. But I think very much more so the real meaning behind this is, do not bear the name or do not represent the name. You are my people. You bear the name of Yahweh as Yahweh's people. You need to act like it. Y'all bear my name. Make sure you represent it well. It reminds me a lot of what many sons might say to their children, what many fathers might say to their children. You have my last name. That means something. Make sure you represent that well. I really think that's more of the essence of what's going on in the third command than anything else. Number 4, remember the Sabbath. Again, this is something that goes back to some previous commands. It is the day of rest in which they would basically observe it as their holy day to remember Yahweh on that day. And then those are all focused on their relationship with Yahweh, 1 through 4. So then 5 through 10 represent or focus more so on some interaction between one another. Honor your father and mother, do not murder, do not commit adultery, do not steal, do not bear false testimony, and do not covet. These are really the foundational building blocks of a good society and a good community. Remember, they were to be a nation of priests. They were to represent Yahweh to the nations and draw the nations back to Yahweh through the way they behave. They were to be a holy nation. What does a holy nation look like? This is what a holy nation looks like. It is a people who do not murder, a people who do not commit adultery, a people who do not steal, who do not give false witness, who do not covet from their neighbors. Those foundational building blocks create a holy nation. Well, at this, all the people witness this. They witness the booming sound, the thunder and the lightning, the sound of the trumpet, the mountain being surrounded by smoke, and they're terrified, and rightly so. And that's God's point. They go to Moses, they say, hey, you just keep talking to us. We don't have to hear from God. Kind of scared if he talks to us, we're going to die. So let's just continue this dialogue between us and yourself. And Moses says, listen, this is purposeful. God has come to test you, or to to allow you to see his power, to see his majesty, so that you will fear him and not sin. You know, it just so happens if the plagues and the Red Sea didn't get the point across to you, you being here in this moment and you seeing this power displayed in this way, hopefully this will for sure get it across to you that you don't need to mess around whenever it comes to God. You need to respect him as holy, and you need to do what is right. And then finally, there's some other commands beginning in verse 22. I'll talk about some of that more tomorrow. We'll connect that with chapter 21, which we're going to read tomorrow. Actually, tomorrow we're going to read 21 and 22. Let's see here. Not too many. A good few verses, but it seems like they're much shorter verses. Just a couple of less than about a page and a half. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 1.5 openings, we'll say, in my Bible. So not too much reading tomorrow. It is getting a lot more to some of the drier things within the text, but certainly we'll make sure to make some good connections here and some good application of this text for us as well. Give us something to think about. Well, for me, what I want to think about just real fast and just give a little preview for is, again, what they were to be. Again, they were to recognize what God had done. They were then to listen and to keep his commands and his covenants. And then in doing so, they would be my own possession, a kingdom of priests, a holy nation. This Sunday is coming up as the first Sunday of March. And so we'll be continuing our series for this year of what it means to be in Christ, who we are in Christ. And what we're going to focus on this Sunday is what we see here in this text, that we are priests. What does it mean to be priests? Well, the real short synopsis of it is that we are to represent God to those who are outside. Here, this is the point of this. There are many functions of priest. There's mediation, but here specifically, you will be my own possession out of all the peoples. Although the whole earth is mine. Again, the whole earth is God. All nations do belong to God, even though God has disinherited them and is focused primarily on the family of Abraham and the nation that has come from them. And you will be my kingdom of priests and my holy nation. That connection needs to be made there, that you're my special people. The whole earth is mine, yes, but you're going to serve this purpose. This function that you're going to serve is to draw the nations back to me. And that, in many ways, is what we're to do as Christians. So I'm looking forward to talking about that some on Sunday and making some application from the Old Testament to what it means for us to be a kingdom of priests for God even today as his people and as his church. Really looking forward to that. Hopefully that will be a great study on Sunday. I appreciate so much you tuning into this reading on this Wednesday morning. Looking forward to being with everybody tonight for our Bible studies at 7 p.m. Looking forward to seeing you there. Until then, have a great rest of your Wednesday, everyone. Take care and God bless.